Spring, 1895. Mary Baker Eddy visits the First Church of Christ Scientist in Boston for the first time. It is a moment of fulfillment for a woman who has undergone years of uncertainty, struggle, even ridicule, as she has worked to share a spiritual discovery with the world. Mrs. Eddy enters the new building quietly, without the congregation present. She pauses and kneels in prayer before the words which affirm what she believes has brought her church this far. It is her faith in God that is core to her life's work.
From my early childhood, I was impelled to seek diligently for the knowledge of God as the one great and ever-present relief from human woe.
Mary Baker is born in 1821 on a farm in Bow, New Hampshire. She is raised by a kind and loving mother and a devoted but strict father.
Her father very much emphasized the hard doctrines of Calvinism, notions of predestination and the wrath of God. Her mother placed her emphasis on the love and mercy and goodness of God, and Mary found herself gravitating toward her mother's version of that Calvinist gospel rather than her father's.
The young Mary loves to read and write, but is frail and often ill.
Her father described her as having a head that was too big for her body, suggesting that her intellectual capacity always surpassed her kind of physical limitations. She suffered from a variety of ailments that would be difficult to diagnose today, and especially so in the mid-19th century. She found a way to persevere and continued to pursue her education and marriage and a life in spite of these challenges that she faced.
6 months into her first marriage, Mary's husband, George Glover, dies from yellow fever, leaving her pregnant and alone. Later, due to Mary's fragile health and inability to provide for her young son, he is sent to live with a childless couple who eventually move away with him. Throughout these difficult years, Mary Baker Eddy looks for a way to ease her suffering.
People have always been sick throughout history, and people have always been searching for cures to their suffering. So she, like many other people in the 19th century, picks up all the different kinds of cures that are out there. She tries homeopathy. She looks into water cures. She really kind of throws herself into the study of early medicine, really.
In 1866, an event forever changes Mary Baker Eddy's life. While walking to a meeting on a cold February night, she slips on the ice and suffers severe internal injuries. Her friends fear the worst.
When Mary Baker Eddy falls in the winter of 1866, the kinds of injuries that occur in that fall were perceived by everyone around her to be those from which she couldn't possibly recover. She is left alone in a bedroom and calls for a Bible and reads a passage describing an episode in which Jesus heals. She begins to make a miraculous recovery. She rises from her bed, and over the course of the following year, she grows in health and strength.
This fall on the ice in Lynn, Massachusetts is one that Eddy herself would call the falling apple, the great discovery, as she says, the way in which she understands finally how it is that she can make herself and other people well.
The divine hand led me into a new world of light and life.
Mrs. Eddy's healing deepens her quest to discover universal spiritual laws and how they apply to human experience. Eddy continues her lifelong study of the Bible, using scientific inquiry to understand these principles.
Mary Baker Eddy comes on the scene at a moment when Christian thought and what we today call science were on divergent paths. Up until the mid-19th century, these were seen as very complementary, very capable of coexistence. And so if you think about science and Christianity moving on two kind of different cultural tracks, they had been closely aligned, but in Mary Baker Eddy's life, they're moving in two different directions, and different cultures are coalescing around those two different forms of knowledge. By declaring her discovery Christian Science, Mary Baker Eddy is declaring that true science and true Christianity are actually compatible, that they coexist quite effectively. A revolutionary move to reunite these two modes of knowledge that the culture around her was trying to separate.
Mary Baker Eddy begins to explain these universal truths to small gatherings and teaches that everyone reflects the divine nature and possesses the ability to express God.
Her goal was always to heal people. She felt she had this great discovery and she wanted to share it with people.
Mary Baker Eddy writes about what she has discovered, and in 1875, publishes her book, Science and Health. In subsequent editions, she adds, "with key to the scriptures" to the title. 4 years later, she founds the Church of Christ Scientist. By her side is her new husband, Asa Gilbert Eddy, who, as a Christian Science practitioner and teacher, helps her establish the fledgling church before his death in 1882. By this time, Mary Baker Eddy has moved to the progressive and dynamic city of Boston, where her lectures and sermons attract growing, enthusiastic audiences. In 1893, she charges her board of directors to build a church in Boston's Back Bay neighborhood as the mother church to this growing movement.
She founded a movement that would become a worldwide movement, and that still exists today. She wanted to get her ideas out. She understood, again, the power of the word. She founded a publishing empire to promulgate her ideas, to get them out, to disseminate them. All, again, this is before women have the vote.
For Mary Baker Eddy to write a sacred text that would not only become widely distributed and read, not only in the United States but around the world, but then to rest a growing church structure on that text is extraordinary. It's remarkable.
Mary Baker Eddy's lifelong search for truth found its home in the Bible. Her desire to make her spiritual discovery clearer impelled her to revise Science and Health multiple times until her passing in 1910. But the central message of her work would never change. as she urged followers to seek, express, and demonstrate God's love.